I'm Alistair Stevens.
I'm Elizabeth Ray.
And Tom Cruise is John Anderton in Minority Report. You know how there are those things that you just promise yourself that someday you're going to do? They're just forever on your to-do list. Like eventually you're going to clean out the garage, or eventually you're going to go through all of your tax paperwork for the last decade and just get it all filed away properly, that kind of thing.
Sure.
So Steven Spielberg and Tom Cruise met in 1983 on the set of Risky Business in Chicago. They got along famously and decided that one day they were going to make a movie together. And
Wow.
It took them the better part of 20 years, despite being the most famous director and arguably the most famous movie star in the entire world. Tell me, what do you make of Steven Spielberg?
Oh, gosh. I mean, he's such an iconic director. He's made so many different things. It always surprises me, I think, just like how vastly different his films look and feel.
Yeah.
But they're almost always just great. I feel like he's always doing something that I try to do myself in making really any kind of entertainment, which is to make something that's both a fun ride, but also feels like art, you know?
Sure.
So I always appreciate that. But I do think that there's a time, and I think it's basically right after this movie for a while when he's doing like The Terminal.
Yes,
And
that's certainly a swing
yeah.
right after this film. Though the same year as this film is Catch Me If You Can.
And I do like Catch Me
Which
If
is
You Can.
a terrific film.
I
but
like that one.
We can run through and just do a quick thumbs up, thumbs down on an excerpt of his
Wow.
filmography, if you'd like.
Just a quick up and down. I
Just
like
a
that.
quick up
Just
and
a
down.
quick up and down.
So he opens with Duel and The Sugarland Express, which unless you're a real film
Haven't seen
geek,
either.
you've never
Yeah.
seen. Then his real breakout is Jaws in 1975.
Up.
Close Encounters of the Third Kind
Up.
in 77. His first disaster is his fifth film, 1941 in 1979, is a box
I don't
office
know it.
bomb. Yeah, and that's why.
And that's why. Yeah.
Because it's a comedy about the Second World War.
Oh, a real springtime for Hitler.
Exactly
Okay.
right.
All
And
right.
even in the very late 1970s, we can't really get away with that. But he comes back from that. And this is always the story of Spielberg, is that he always comes back, because he comes back from that disaster with a little movie called Raiders of the Lost Ark. You may have heard
Way
of it.
up, thumbs up.
Then E.T., the extraterrestrial.
Up, obviously.
This is the point in his career when he meets Tom Cruise, when he is really establishing himself as a powerhouse director. He can't work with Cruise right then when Cruise is producing Risky Business, because he has to go off and prep for Temple of Doom.
Did Spielberg also do Temple of Doom?
He absolutely
That's
did.
so funny.
He absolutely
I
did.
know that that's a bad movie, but I have to give it an up because I watched it so much as a child, and it was just like one of my go-to kid movies.
That is literally how everyone who likes Temple
Yeah.
of Doom feels.
And
It
I
is
think
a
that's fine.
bad film
Yep.
that we still like for
Exactly.
some reason.
For some reason, and that reason is because I was 11.
But
Yeah.
then he starts to wander away. Then he switches over to Warner for a couple movies, and he does The Color Purple, which is an important film, but perhaps not a very
Important.
good
I
film.
haven't seen it.
Then he does Empire of the Sun, which is kind of wobbly.
Oh, yeah.
He
I'm gonna
comes
have to get that one
back
down.
in 1989. In 1989, he's actually slated to work with Cruise because he is hired to work on Rain Man. He is originally going to direct Rain Man, but he
Oh.
has to leave the production of Rain Man because he realizes in 1989 that the time is running out for him to make another Indiana Jones sequel, because Harrison Ford is almost 50, you guys, and if he doesn't make this Indy sequel now, he's never going to be able to, because
He'll
who
never
is
make
going to
another.
buy Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones past the age of 50? Why, 'twould be implausible.
Oh.
So he goes off to make a very good film, Indiana Jones and the Last
He
Crusade.
just hadn't met his new muse, Shia LaBeouf yet, that's
Exactly.
all.
Jesus. Also in 1989, he directs Always with Richard Dreyfuss and Holly Hunter and John Goodman.
Sure.
The ghost of a pilot teaches a young pilot how to be a pilot and also how to fall in love with his ex-girlfriend. Famously, Audrey Hepburn's last screen role, I believe.
Wow,
Yep.
wild.
Then this is him falling into his pattern of, I'm going to take a couple of years off, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to do 2 movies in 1 year.
Okay.
So he warms up with Hook in 1991.
Way up, obviously.
When was the last time you saw Hook?
Listen, again,
Because
this might
that
be
thumbs up
another
might be
Temple of
vulnerable.
Doom situation, but I'm just saying, in like the stories that shaped me, there's one Rufy. Oh.
Look, whether we like it or not, we have to admit, we have to formally concede Bangarang.
Bangarang.
We just have to.
I mean, you got it.
Yeah. In 1993, I mean, check this out. In 1 year, he directs Jurassic Park and Schindler's List,
Shut the front door.
changing the
Yeah.
face of cinema.
Mhm.
But then he takes a few years off, comes back in 97 with The Lost World Jurassic Park and Amistad, Two extremely bad films.
Those are bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
In 1998, he changes the game again with Saving Private Ryan. In 2001, this is actually around the time when he's supposed to be, we'll get into the history of this movie in particular, but this is around the time when he and Cruise are like dancing around each other.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, Cruise wants to make it in the year 2000, but John Woo's production for Mission Impossible 2 goes long, so they have to push it back. But then Spielberg agrees to pick up Stanley Kubrick's project AI, Artificial Intelligence. Which, of course, had fallen fallow upon Kubrick's death. So
I like that.
Spielberg has
another
to push
one I
it back
liked
too.
Then I haven't seen it in so long I couldn't say if it's good, but I liked it when I saw it in theaters and saw it a couple of times. I think.
have a sneaking suspicion. AI and Minority Report, very similar films.
Right.
B, I think AI is probably better now than it was in 2001.
Interesting.
It would be an interesting one to go back to, for sure. Then in 2002, the same year as Minority Report, Catch Me If You Can. 2004 is The Terminal. 2005, War of the Worlds, a film which we will discuss on this podcast, and a film which I absolutely defend. And Munich, which is a really interesting film that I do not enjoy at all.
Don't know that one.
2008, the aforementioned Mr. LaBeouf with Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Haven't seen it.
2011, The Adventures of Tintin, his first experiment in
That's
motion
capture.
capture.
That's what I was thinking of, because
Tintin
I know
is great.
Zemeckis does all this weird motion capture stuff.
Well,
and so sometimes I get those two confused.
Well, Zemeckis is a Spielberg protege. Spielberg basically taps Zemeckis as an up-and-coming talent and then kind of shepherds his career through the first few films that he produces. He, I think, writes on 1941 and damn near kills his career before it starts. I really like The Adventures of Tintin. I do not like his other 2011 film, War Horse, which is extremely boring.
No, that one wasn't good.
2012 is the Daniel Day-Lewis Lincoln, which is an incredible piece of work.
Yeah?
We should definitely try. Yeah, we should check that out. It's
I didn't
exactly
see that
what you think
one.
it's going to be.
Sure.
But it's also extremely good.
Okay, fair enough.
Then in 2015, Bridge of Spies. He's really working with Tom Hanks a lot now. We're developing a real working relationship with Tom Hanks at this point.
Spies.
Cold War Diplomacy and Negotiation. Debating with Russia whether or not a prisoner can be returned. If you're into The West Wing with like all of the gloss just knocked off of it, then this is the film
Don't
for
know
you.
if I am.
Tom Hanks has a cold through the entire film, and it is just this beleaguered, worn down performance that is still Tom Hanks being that like, I'm very good at my job, that thing that he does when he's on screen.
Known for.
It's, I think, a really, really good movie. In 2016, we're back to motion capture with the, I'm sorry to say, calamitous adaptation of the BFG, which is extremely poor.
Didn't see that one either.
2017 is The Post.
I want to see that
Post.
one.
That's really good too.
Really great poster for that one. I know it's kind of a dumb thing to say, but every time I see it, I think, damn, that's iconic. It's up at AFI.
Yeah. 2018 is Ready Player One, his adaptation of Ernest Cline's book.
Didn't watch.
Which is, I find that movie really interesting because we've established like Spielberg has his weaknesses, he has his flaws, he has his areas in which he does not excel.
Mm-hmm.
Ready Player One is bad in ways completely distinct from any other Spielberg movie. I think it's a fascinating exercise in how a movie can just collapse under its own weight, like almost without any directorial influence, without any involvement of any of the actors or cast or crew or anything. It just cannot sustain itself because it's fundamentally a bad story, right? It fundamentally doesn't work, and it's broken in a way that is so profound that the most talented people and the most amount of money in the world cannot keep it standing. It's a really interesting experiment in a colossal kind of failure, honestly.
Yeah.
But then again, he bounces back, right? He bounces back most audaciously here with the 2021 West Side Story.
Yes.
Which is
now,
a
that
triumph.
one I did see, and it is a triumph.
A triumph of a film that ought not to be remade, right? Like, there's
this
no
is kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah. But it's so good.
It is good.
Yeah.
It is good.
It's wild.
Undeniably.
Famously, one of my worst opinions in the world is that I prefer In the Heights to West Side Story, but that's just me. And then, of course, in 2022, he kind of completes this arc of self-mythology with The Fabelmans. Retelling the story of his own origin.
Yeah.
There are some great things in The Fabelmans, I'm very glad that we have it. I think that film is going to feel very different after Spielberg passes.
Yeah, I think that's probably right.
And of course, he's still working now. We're probably going to get another 15 films out of him before he's done. How do you like him as a match for Tom Cruise, the last star in Hollywood?
I mean, it makes a lot of sense, right? I can see why the two of them would want to work together. I can see why this is a project that they both chose, even though I don't think it works ultimately. Spoilers for the end of my verdict on this film.
Oh, you're having a premonition of how you're going to feel at the end of this discussion?
I'm just saying. But it certainly makes a lot of sense. Yeah. It is interesting to me that Spielberg doesn't seem to have that like repertory company of players that he brings back over and over again, the way that so many other auteur directors do.
Tom Hanks, for sure, I think, has demonstrated his allegiance to Spielberg and will basically come anytime that there's a film in production. But apart from that, yeah, he'll go out and he will find and explore new talent in a really interesting way.
Yeah,
it's one of the things that makes the cast of West Side Story stand out.
I was going to say
is how surprising that cast is and how perfect it is. It's the great thing that Spielberg does. For every film that he produces, he has like 3 more that he has taken some distance down the road and then abandoned. He usually has 2, 3, 4 films in pre-production at once. And when the lightning strikes and everything comes together, everything falls into place, that's the next movie he directs.
Wow.
It would be great. Someday we'll get a coffee table book of all the unproduced, undirected Steven Spielberg projects, and we shall weep for the glory that has been denied us.
Of course.
We will get into the minutiae of Minority Report. We will see how we feel about this very, very ambitious 2002 sci-fi thriller. But first, you've got the trailer game.
Oh, an easy one. Sure.
Sure.
Maybe. I've been thinking about, of course, where it goes on the list. In a film heralded as eye-blistering, Detective Maestro Tom Cruise sees glimpses of the future.
There's nothing more destructive to the metaphysical fabric that binds us than the untimely murder of one human being by another.
Colin Farrell searches for the flaw in the system, and Neil McDonough seems like he's gonna be the bad guy, but isn't. That is the question of Minority Report. Crazy cars, rolling eyeballs, and artisanal wooden marbles.
Penis piercing.
In Steven Spielberg's Minority Report.
Those rolling eyeballs, though.
Really upsetting.
Really.
There's a lot in this movie that's like surprisingly upsetting.
You could have ended that thought much earlier. There's a lot in this movie.
There's a lot.
There's maybe the most in this movie.
It's funny. There are things about it that made me think, like, is this what body horror is? Is this what they mean?
In part, for sure. Yeah.
Because I have a friend now who's like super into horror movies. And so like I didn't realize how many like distinctive genres within the genre there are of horror movies. But that one, I assume, because I've never seen anything like it, but like the Saw movies and stuff must be about that, just making you,
Yeah.
There was a lot of that in here.
There's a lot, and it's wildly unpleasant.
It's really unpleasant.
Almost all unnecessary. This is a film.
And not very Spielberg-y.
That pulled together every idea that it could find and then used them all.
Yeah. Then again, we did have eyeball soup in the aforementioned Temple of Doom.
You know what? That's a fair point. It's not one of Spielberg's like go-to motifs. It's not one of his regular cinematic flourishes, but it is now recurring, officially recurring.
Officially recurring eyeballs.
I don't remember if there were eyeballs in The Terminal, but maybe. No one ever made it to the third act of that film. So let's get into the history of this film because I find this story fascinating and I hope that you will too.
I'm certainly very curious because this is a weird one. I really want to know how this happened.
It is. We're going to rewind to 1990. We're going to rewind to the Rain Man Last Crusade era. We're going to rewind to the moment when it looks as though Spielberg and Cruise will finally work together and then don't. Because over on the other side of Hollywood, on the other side of the tracks, where it's always raining and it's always just after midnight, where the porn theaters are, that's where we find Dutch maestro Paul Verhoeven.
Yeah.
Who is at that point putting the finishing touches to his third American film and by far the biggest budget that he's ever had, a movie called Total Recall, starring, of course, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sharon Stone, a movie which it looks like, thanks to our ever unpredictable patrons, we are going to be discussing over on the Patreon page for Next Word. That's patreon.com/nextword if you would like to hear in a couple of weeks us talking about Total Recall, the original one, not the much worse Colin Farrell one, which is very bad. So Verhoeven has taken this story by renowned seminal American science fiction author Philip K. Dick, who also gave the inspiration for Blade Runner and who sadly died right before Ridley Scott's adaptation of Blade Runner was released. He took Philip K. Dick's short story, We Can Remember It For You Wholesale, and turns it into this splashy, gory, action-packed, very ridiculous satire of American excess and American consumerism. And it is a huge hit. And the thing that happens because it is a huge hit is that there is a sudden bidding war for all of Philip K. Dick's work. Suddenly, it all becomes extremely popular. In 1992, his short story Minority Report is optioned by Gary Goldman and is intended to be adapted so that it can serve as a direct sequel. It is going to be relocated to Mars so that Arnold Schwarzenegger can get caught up in this story now, right? Which makes a kind of sense. Philip K. Dick, for all that he was a genius, didn't have all that many kinds of stories. They kind of are all occupied with the same notions of personhood and consciousness and memory and identity, right? You can see the commonality there, I think, between We Can Remember It For You Wholesale that becomes Total Recall and obviously, I mean, to a certain extent too, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep that becomes Blade Runner as well, and also Minority Report, right? These are very much sister pictures. They kind of have the same underlying philosophical concerns. So Goldman buys the rights for Minority Report. He starts working on this adaptive process, but then his company, Korolko, they go out of business in 1995. They go completely under, and the rights are bought out by Miramax, who just strip out all of the stuff that was added in and decide to make it instead a standalone film. This project, then, in this very, very simplified, nascent form, is handed to Dutch filmmaker Jan de Bont, who is hired to direct with John Cohen, the novelist, adapting the screenplay. At this point, and apparently this continues to the present day, Tom Cruise somehow got his hands on this script and read it because Tom Cruise gets his hands on every single script in Hollywood. He is apparently a voracious reader, which I find really interesting and certainly speaks to his awareness of the industry, even if it doesn't always inform the perfect choices in his career trajectory. Cruise loves the script and refers it to Steven Spielberg. He says, maybe this can be the project that we work on together. Spielberg looks at the script and says, no, this is quite bad. Certainly not in this state. Cohen takes another couple of swings at it and finally gets it into a state that Spielberg is interested. Spielberg goes to Jan de Bont, who is at that point deep in the post-production process of Twister, a film that I know you adore. Yes.
Well, I mean, you got it if you're from Oklahoma.
Absolutely. And
we're going to go see Twisters in theaters, right? Like we have to, even though it's going to be bad.
Yeah. There's a grim inevitability to it. Certainly.
That's okay.
Maybe if we're over our actual real life PTSD about tornadoes. Yes.
Yeah. We'll go to the Warren where we can have a cocktail on the balcony as we watch it. Maybe two.
So Spielberg goes to de Bont and says, hey, you know, this Minority Report thing that's never going to be successful anyway, why don't I take that off your hands? And instead, you can direct the Liam Neeson, Catherine Zeta-Jones, Owen Wilson movie, The Haunting. De Bont agrees.
I have no memory of that film.
It was not successful.
Okay, all right.
De Bont agrees to that switch. Spielberg keeps his fingers in the pie vis-a-vis The Haunting, and he and De Bont just have a huge falling out. Like they do not like each other at all. De Bont has an executive producer credit on Minority Report, despite, per Spielberg, never working on it even a little. So the production apparatus that they set up for this film, which they already know is going to be extremely expensive, is incredibly complicated, right? It's a co-production between DreamWorks, which is Steven Spielberg's studio, Amblin, which is Steven Spielberg's production company, Cruise Wagner Productions, de Bont's production company Blue Tulip, and 20th Century Fox. We just bring in 20th Century Fox there too for some like logistical support. Spielberg convinces Cruise not to take any money up front for the project and instead to take a cut of the back end. Neither Spielberg nor Cruise get paychecks for this film. The film still costs $102 million.
Oh, it does look expensive.
Fantastically expensive. Yeah. So it's not just the investment of production logistics, of man hours, and of course a colossal amount of money that makes Minority Report what it is. In 1999, Spielberg gathers together 15 scientists, thinkers, and futurists for a 3-day conference in which they sit down and speculate about the world in which the film is set.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
It is.
Yeah.
Production designer Alex McDowell, who was hired based on his work on Fight Club, wrote a production Bible based on contributions from these thinkers, including scientist Neil Gershenfeld, architect Peter Calthorpe, computer scientist and one of the founding fathers of virtual reality as a concept, Jaron Lanier, speculative novelist Douglas Copeland, one of my favorite novelists, who maybe doesn't quite belong in that room, but I'm glad that he was there nonetheless. And professional futurist Peter Schwartz, who had previously consulted on movies like War Games, Sneakers, and Deep Impact. And you know, that's 2 really good movies right there. Those discussions all inform the look, the feel, the developed technologies that are presented. And these are the aforementioned too many ideas, I think.
Yeah,
all of the ideas that come out of this conference are used, and we need maybe a third of them.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because they just clutter the picture, don't they?
Yeah, I do think so. What do you think is the most effective when it comes to all of the futuristic world building.
Oh, I think it's unarguable. I think it's the holographic computer screens.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Here we are,
really
20
cool.
years later.
We're still doing that for Marvel to make it look awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
It's still cool. So many people have ripped it off. And whenever we see it in a film, we still all collectively say, oh, hey, it's that thing from Minority Report. I think they managed to communicate this impossible technology really beautifully. And I think we can absolutely credit a lot of that to Cruise. You know, you described him in the trailer game as the maestro because of that position. It is orchestral. It's beautiful to watch him manipulate this thing. And it's so good too, because so much later in the film when Colin Farrell tries and he is all lopsided and arched and twitchy and the system is obviously not responding as fluidly as it does when Cruise is in control. It's a really beautiful piece of production design. I think that has to be
I agree.
the coolest and most important thing in the whole movie, right? Is there anything else that really stands out to you?
The other thing that stands out is the production design that really shows like the difference between the haves and the have-nots, like the utopian ideal with the pre-crime organization and how sleek and clean everything there is. And then the like tenement housing that we have towards the end. I think especially of that the sequence with when the spiders come into the building and we're getting all those overhead shots.
A harrowing sequence.
Really, really it is. Yeah. And so I think that those combinations of just like squalor and sleek sophistication are very interesting.
I think that is true. I don't find that to be as comprehensive as I would like it to be. I have trouble envisioning a world that looks like that utopian idyll and dystopian slum. Also incorporating Lara's, colonial farmhouse that she has way out in the middle of nowhere.
That was weird.
It's odd, right?
It is odd. Yeah. Not all of it works together. And the strange greenhouse similarly seemed really out of place.
Professor Sprout's magical greenhouse. Yeah, we'll talk about that when we get to it. I promise.
And her little purple hat. Yeah.
The other thing that it completely anticipates in a way that is so much more naturalistic than films of the time. It really does predict how this technology will be used and integrated and how it will be nothing special. Is that he basically has a Google Home. He basically has an Alexa.
Yeah, that's true.
He's just giving verbal commands to his house in exactly the way that we do, which is amazingly prophetic for a film in 2002, don't you think?
Yeah. What did you think of the not quite 3D imaging of his son and wife?
I think it's extremely good. And I like, obviously we've invested all of this time developing intellectually, at least this technology. So we show all the little projection points that are combining to create this quasi three-dimensional hologram, which even in the fiction doesn't look good. Yeah. But it looks good enough. And I'm reminded,
which is how it always starts, know?
And it's only a few years after this that we have that weird craze for 3D TVs that some people still have in their houses. That's a technology that absolutely died, right?
Yeah,
you cannot for love nor money buy a 3D TV now. Yeah. But for a moment there, it looked like they were the future. And now, of course, we've done what these kind of futurists could not anticipate, which is move so much more into the cloud. I find it hilarious that when we're dealing with these incredibly high-tech holographic computer systems, we still have to copy information onto what is effectively a floppy disk, carry it across the room, and slide it into the side of our transparent monitor. There are always these breaking points in what can be imagined. Right. And nobody, I think, imagined, for all that we included, the architect of virtual technology, software and hardware in this conference, we didn't imagine that VR would be the ongoing promise that it is, I guess, the ongoing next big thing. Apart from that, I think it works pretty well. The only thing that really fails for me are the stupid cars.
Oh, see, I thought the cars look kind of cool, but the way that they actually move in the city, I find maybe a little dumb.
Yes, the industrial design of that I don't really get. The design of I believe it's a Lexus that is constructed around Tom Cruise during the fight in the... Do you know, that is an idea that Spielberg took from Hitchcock. Hitchcock had this idea for, wouldn't it be great if a fight took place in a car factory and a car was constructed around our hero? And you can imagine, right? Like a 1940s and 1950s, right? It's got a real ambition to it.
I guess.
As it's architected here, it feels like the droid factory sequence from Attack of the Clones.
100%. So silly. Yeah. Or some kind, which also reminds me of a video game. They both remind me of a video game level.
We'll talk about why that happens in just a few minutes. Okay. But yeah. The other thing, of course, I suppose, is the personalized ads, which are now everywhere and are so brilliant. This is also such a reference to Verhoeven and his kind of satire of like American consumerism. It's also a work of genius by the production staff because they can actually get money from all of those real life brands. They didn't have to make them real life brands. They could have made stuff up, but instead you're going to get $500,000 from Gap. You're going to get $2 million from Lexus. You're going to get
Dasani showed up.
Dasani for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Overall, how do you think the movie looks to you? Not just the production design, but also, well, we should probably talk about the cinematography, right?
Yeah, it's too much. A lot of the cinematography is really beautiful. Like I said, that spider sequence especially stood out to me. But whatever they're doing with the lighting and the contrast and just blowing everything out, I don't understand. And to me, it takes away from the experience.
Would you believe that this movie was shot by Janusz Kaminski, the same guy that shot Jerry Maguire?
Whoa. I mean, okay. When we did Jerry Maguire, I did talk about the contrast in that movie, and particularly the coffee table scene where the light's coming up.
Yes.
So there was some of that.
This
but
is
nothing.
not. Yeah, that is not a feature of Janusz Kaminski's filmmaking. That is not a feature of his cinematography. He is much more varied and capable than that. He is Spielberg's guy. He makes every single one of the last, 15 of Spielberg's movies. He's made everything. He's incredible. Spielberg goes to him and says, Janusz, I want us to make the ugliest, nastiest film that we've ever made. All of this is intentional. He deliberately overlights every single set in the movie. He then, because we're still shooting on film and we're using actual chemical processes, he performs what they call a bleach bypass, which soaks out most of the color saturation, but leaves those inky blacks, right?
Yeah.
We don't ever wash the blacks to gray as we would if this was properly monochromatic. So you get all of these deep blacks, all of this deep contrast, but you don't get any color pop. Everything else is wildly desaturated. He also doesn't use a film lens longer than 28 millimeters. And this might get a little nerdy for some of our folks at home, I know. He doesn't use a lens with a longer focal length than 28 millimeters. He uses wide angle lenses, right? Like the average one that you're going to use is maybe 35 mil, maybe you'll go as high as a 50, right? The higher that number gets, the more telephoto the lens is.
Right.
But he is using wide angle, like landscape lenses for close-ups. He is putting those lenses real close to his actors, which is why this movie has this infinite depth of field. Nothing in this film is out of focus. It's bizarre.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like any other film. Like it feels grungy and washed out in that like late 90s, early 2000s, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's kind of aping The Matrix a little bit without the color wash, without the color grading that they do on The Matrix. It's kind of echoing some of that, but it has a really distinctive look that is intentionally really, really ugly. The other thing that Spielberg decides to do is completely throw out the handbook on where you put the camera when you're shooting a scene. There's almost nothing conventional in this movie. There's no shot, reverse shot, two shot over the shoulder. We don't do any of it. Everything is specific and directed and avant-garde. Everything is a very conscious choice. And I will say, a lot of it doesn't totally work. But when it works, holy smokes, it's amazing.
Okay.
So as I said, between Mission Impossible 2 overrunning and Steven Spielberg being roped into AI and that post-Kubrick production there, the film is just taking forever to get going. This does give Spielberg enough time to bring in Scott Frank, the screenwriter, to do an entirely new pass on the script because he still doesn't feel like the script is strong enough. Scott Frank wrote the very good, I think, 1991 neo-noir mystery Dead Again, starring Kenneth Branagh and Emma Thompson.
Oh, I've heard of that, but I've never seen it.
The use of the scissors as a murder weapon at the beginning of Minority Report is a reference to scissors being used as a murder weapon in Dead Again. That is a great film. I really like that one. He also co-wrote Malice with Aaron Sorkin in 1993, and he adapted Elmore Leonard for Steven Soderbergh's very sexy Out of Sight in 1998.
I have seen that one.
Yeah. John August, the famed screenwriter, also does an uncredited pass on the script, but most of it apparently is Frank's. So the film is brought into production in 1999 because they think they're going to be able to make it then, again, before Mission Impossible 2 runs long. And the supporting cast at that point is completely different. We don't have Colin Farrell. No. We have Matt Damon.
Oh, that would have been better.
I think it might have been. We'll talk about Colin Farrell in just a minute.
Okay.
Damon can't commit to it, though, because he is already contracted to do Ocean's 11 and has to go off.
Oh, he's great in that.
To do that.
Yeah. Sir
Ian McKellen was cast in the Max von Sydow role, but he couldn't take it because he had to go off and be in New Zealand for a few years. Similarly, Cate Blanchett was cast as Agatha, as the Samantha Morton role.
I can see
and
that
also
too.
had to drop out for the same reason as Sir Ian. In the end, I broadly like the cast that we have very much.
I think that I do, yeah.
But it's hard not to think of Damon in particular.
Yeah.
I think, let's talk a little about Colin Farrell. I think Colin Farrell is great. Do you like Colin Farrell in general?
In general, I like Colin Farrell. Yes, I liked him in his heyday, and I have liked him since he came back for Banshees. So, yes.
Is this a poor use of his talents?
Yes.
He shouldn't
It's also
be
not
playing
a good
the straight-laced
character,
guy, though,
Yeah.
should he?
No, his face is not for that.
No.
Especially in this age where he just looked so devious. But what did we see him in recently where he was doing something that was too similar to this? It was the silly, one of the Harry Potters, one of the...
Fantastic Beasts, the first Fantastic Beasts, which he co-stars in with Samantha Morton. It's a little Minority Report.
That's right.
Get together,
I knew I recognized her.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah. Wow. Well, in any case,
you're right though. That's exactly the same performance.
It's the same performance as the same guy. Yeah. So, and I think maybe that is just a little bit cartoonish. It works much better for Harry Potter than it does for Minority Report.
Yeah. I'll give you the gloss here of his life and career. He's born in 1976 in Castleknock in Dublin.
I'm sorry, he's Irish? That's so strange.
It never comes up.
Never comes up.
He first gets attention in the coziest show that has ever existed, the BBC rural thing that will occupy space in your life. Like, I can't even call it a drama because there wasn't any, and I can't even call it a romance because really, with one exception, there really wasn't a romance either. He appears in the show Ballykissangel, which is what if Irish people were Irish for a little while, very gently, on your TV on a Sunday evening.
I can see where people would return to that, actually.
This is the thing. People came out of that show, like actors forged careers in that show, but no one did it as fast or as thoroughly as Colin Farrell. I believe that he does 18 episodes of that show, and then they're like, no. Off to Hollywood with you, sir. You've got too much of, all this.
He does.
He appears in Ordinary Decent Criminals and Tigerland in 2000, the latter of which was directed by Joel Schumacher and is one of the most devastating bombs of all time. Off of a budget of $10 million, it makes less than $150,000.
Whoa.
A huge bomb.
That is a bummer.
In 2002, alongside Minority Report, he's in Hearts War and he's in Phone Booth. He's extremely good in Phone Booth, which is also directed by Joel Schumacher. In 2003, he'll appear in 5 films, including playing the villain Bullseye in the extremely very bad Ben Affleck Daredevil movie.
Oh, sure.
Just a calamitous film.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about that one.
Farrell has battled with addiction in many forms through the years. There are well-documented accounts of that. He has been desperately miscast in some movies and given incredible performances in others, particularly where they are least expected. He has dated Britney Spears. He has dated Angelina Jolie. He has dated Demi Moore. And he has dated Elizabeth Taylor, who was 40 years older than him.
Whoa. Wow.
And he had nothing but wonderful things to say about her.
No regrets for that guy, I feel like. Britney Spears and Elizabeth Taylor. I mean,
all. It's really
do your thing.
Bracketing an era, right? That is the alpha and omega of something. I'm not completely sure
what that type is, but it's female.
In 2008, he appears in Bruges, where he develops this relationship with Martin McDonagh, the Irish director, who will bring him back in The Banshees of Inisherin in 2023, for which he is nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actor.
I see it. I do.
He's 47 now, and I am confident that the best work of his career is ahead of him. I think he's going to give us very interesting work. I loved his Banshees of Inisherin was not a movie that I adored, certainly not undeservedly. But I think what he was doing was brilliant.
Yes.
And I really want to see what he does next. Let's talk about the rest of our cast, shall we? Let's talk about Samantha Morton. Samantha Morton was a British TV star through the late 1990s. Normally I start this with was born in and went to school in. And I'm not going to talk about Samantha Morton's childhood because it is tragic and awful. And we just ought not to delve too deeply into it, perhaps. But she survived that and really made a name for herself in the late 1990s in costume drama television. She appears in all of these high-profile, high-budget, prestige BBC literary adaptations. She appears in
now you're talking.
The History of Tom Jones and in Emma and in Jane Eyre, of course. She breaks in film in 1999 in Sweet and Lowdown by Woody Allen, which is a very bad film that she's kind of good in. And I think that she gets noticed for playing this kind of, and forgive me because this is very loaded language, obviously, but like fractured women who are victims. That is kind of what Samantha Morton does on and off through her entire career. Not just that, but she oftentimes goes back to that well. And she does it extremely well, but does eventually end up getting kind of typecast. She appears brilliantly in Charlie Kaufman's Synecdoche, New York in 2008. And she is perhaps most famous, sadly, for being the original voice in Spike Jonze's Her in 2013 before being replaced in post-production by
In
Scarlett Johansson.
Pose?
Yes.
Oh, that's rude.
It is extremely rude. Now, I will
Yikes.
say,
I liked Scarlett
I
Johansson.
love
in
her. I think
Yeah.
Scarlett Johansson is great. I would pay good money to hear the Samantha Morton track. If you could just
Yeah.
get that on the Criterion and just listen
Right.
to it.
Oh, damn. Yeah.
That would be
yeah.
really interesting. What do you make of her in what do you make of her? What do you make of Samantha Morton's performance here in Minority Report, this film that we're talking about?
I think she's wonderful. I didn't recognize her off the bat, and I wondered why, because she's doing such lovely things.
She's very transformative as an actress too. She
Yeah,
really likes
I
like
could see that.
physically transforming herself for each new role. Yeah.
I think especially once he pulls her from the tub or the temple, whatever it is, and she becomes just more human,
Yeah.
and you just kind of see as she gets further away from the twins and further away from like all the apparatus of the pre-crime
Machinery.
division of
Yeah,
machinery.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That she becomes something really lovely and warm. And of course, her strange speech about the would-be life of Sean is incredible
The
work.
two scenes for me that really stand out. Yeah, that scene where she's telling them about the future that Sean would have had if things had worked out differently, which is so moving. Like it's impossible to kind of justify narratively, but
Yeah.
it's so powerful. And she's clearly in that scene bringing out such great performances from her
Absolutely.
co-stars there.
Yeah.
That I think is terrific. And everything in the mall, all of
Yeah.
her running commentary as they're navigating that sequence, I just
Yeah, yeah.
love. I love. And I think she's very good throughout. Honestly, it's not perhaps the most, gratifying performance. She does spend a lot of time just laying in a
lot of
bathtub.
time laying in the tub, yeah.
But
Flopping a little bit. But
Ultimately,
yes.
I think she really gets what she deserves
Yeah,
with this
agreed.
film. It's a really nice piece. We should also talk about the aforementioned Neil McDonough,
Yeah.
who is so great. He is so lovely. No relation
He
to
is
Martin
wonderful.
McDonough, the director who works with Colin Farrell. Neil McDonough is born in 1966 and is educated in Syracuse on a baseball scholarship. He then studies at the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art. He's already worked extensively in television and a little in film before he really breaks in Band of Brothers in 2001. He is excellent in Desperate Housewives in 2008. He makes more than 50 episodes in various Arrowverse shows, Arrow, The
Okay.
Flash, those kinds of shows. But let's be honest, he's Dum Dum Dugan.
He's Dum Dum Dugan to me.
Here
yeah.
on this podcast, we are so often critical of the Marvel machine. We are so often critical of the MCU movies. Let's talk about a character that we unambiguously love, both in his film and in his guest starring roles in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and, of course, in
Agent
the
Carter.
brilliant Agent Carter,
Yeah.
which is a
Doesn't get enough
stupendous
talk.
TV show.
Yeah.
I love him as Dum Dum Dugan. It is
Mm-hmm.
a really impossible role that he approaches with such incredible charm and elan.
Yeah.
It's just, I love Neil McDonough. He's
Mm-hmm.
just one of those guys that every time he shows up, he just illuminates the screen. I think
so
he
too.
gives so
Yeah.
much. I would love to see, and we should write, some kind of, complex character-driven prestige drama where he and Eric Dane are brothers.
Whoa.
I think that would. Neil McDonough's the good brother, right? Who's like behaving himself, and Eric Dane is the bad brother because they kind of
Interesting.
look alike in that way. They've kind of got compatible energies, even though they're very different. I think that could be really good.
Interesting. Okay.
And of course, that's the only time that we're going to talk about Grey's Anatomy on today's show, except for Jessica Capshaw, of course, because she is Arizona Robbins.
Arizona
In
Robbins.
Grey's
Who
Anatomy.
knew?
She has appeared in 214 episodes of our beloved Grey's Anatomy. But at least as importantly for our discussion today, she is the daughter of Kate Capshaw, who plays Willie Scott in The Temple of Doom, who is the lead in my beloved Space Camp, a film that we are getting ever closer to, I feel like. And she's also the stepdaughter of Steven Spielberg.
I had no idea.
I had no idea
No
either.
idea.
Yeah. She hasn't really acted all that much, all things considered. But, we can talk about Arizona for a couple minutes if you'd like. What do you think of Arizona Robbins?
As Jessica Capshaw, as this police woman, we're going to call
No,
her.
I really
a
don't care about
pre-crime-
Minority Report right now. I just want to talk to you about Arizona.
We're not talking about Arizona Robbins right now. It'll take too long. Too much breath support. Could not start.
What do you make of Jessica Capshaw in this movie?
Well, she's a surprise and maybe not in it enough to make a very lasting impression, but completely fine.
Yeah, if we didn't
Yeah.
already love her from Grey's Anatomy, we would never have pulled her out
never
of the
have
cast,
noticed.
I think. But
Yeah, yeah.
I like what she's doing. It's very capable. And she's obviously
capable.
demonstrating, even here so early in her career, a real facility with technical language. She's very
is
comfortable
true. That's a
communicating
good point.
personality through this jargon. And I think that
Yeah.
works really nicely. Yeah.
It's a nice call.
Having her
Yeah.
as the balance point to the tension inside the apartment block when the little spider droids are going out to scan everyone's eyes is, I think, really smart and yeah, very well engineered, very well orchestrated. there. That's basically our cast. The movie shoots between March 22nd and July 18th of 2001, which means that Cruise begins principal photography, not prep, not rehearsals, nothing else. He begins actually shooting this very real, very high budget motion picture 3 days after he finishes his shoot on Vanilla Sky.
Oh my God. That's
the man
a fast
is a machine.
turnaround. Wow, he really is.
Exteriors are shot in DC and Virginia. Interiors are largely shot in LA. As I said, the shots are all deliberately just flooded with light. And then we get this bleach bypass to give this very strange combination of grayscale washout, but very inky black shadows. And Minority Report, I think it is fair to say, has cast an inky black shadow in a number of different ways, but none is longer or darker than the digital pre-production process invented for this film. Under production designer Alex McDowell, who I mentioned earlier, this is the film that invents pre-visualization. Pre-visualization is called pre-visualization because of this film, because of the pre-cogs in this film. Previs is the construction of digital environments and sequences prior to production that define the shape of the finished film, because this stuff takes so long that you have to already have your artists running.
Of course you do.
Before you really start work on the real film. When you are hired now for a Marvel movie or a DC movie or a Fast and Furious movie, you are handed a list of 4 or 5 big budget action sequences that the previs guys have been working on already for 6 months, and you have no control over them, which is why the narrative stops when you start these sequences and then picks up again on the other end.
Well, I don't like that.
The car chase
no surprise.
that ends with the worst joke in the world, which is the stupid joke in the
God,
yoga studio.
The contortionist joke. The fuck was that?
Worst
weird
joke. That's the fight in the car factory. Every time we cut to a big action sequence in this movie, it is because it has been prevised and you can suspend the narrative for 5 minutes because no one is going to do anything of note.
Damn.
It sucks.
It sucks.
And it's the bane of modern filmmaking.
I completely agree. That's when I get up and go to the bathroom.
Exactly right. This is why we check out of action sequences in movies now, because you fundamentally know that they do not matter. And they might be impressive. They might be roller coasters. They might be great, but they really have nothing to do with the story that is being presented to you. They are one line in the script.
Oh, okay. That was it right there. I was just going to say, like, if you have that much time to make it, then why can't you put plot and story into those sequences? But I guess that's it, when it's just like
they're siloed away from the rest of the film. There's no like reciprocal
process.
Your director gets and at this point we've already got a 8-minute fight scene. We've already got a 12-minute car chase. You just have to slot that in. You can get your characters to that point and pick your characters up on the other end, but that's it. This is all. We've already done all of the work here, and that work is so expensive that we are not going to change it.
Yep.
That is what previs has given us. That is the poisoned fruit of this tree, unfortunately. And it all starts here in Minority Report. The movie is released on June 21st, 2002, 6 months after Vanilla Sky. It is number 1 at the box office, but only just. It makes $35.7 million, just $416,000 more than the other new release of the week, Lilo and Stitch.
Oh, shoot. Yeah.
What a great weekend to go to the movies.
Okay.
How do you feel about Lilo and Stitch?
I don't have strong feelings about it. I'm not certain that I've seen it start to finish at any point in my life.
I think I am maybe just a touch old for that one.
Yeah.
I think that was when I was out of my Disney phase. Yeah, to the extent that I had a Disney phase.
Right.
But I certainly didn't see that
even I was
for
just
years.
a hair too old for it. So
I was also so turned off by the marketing for that movie. The idea that this is when Disney is so preoccupied with making movies for boys, right? We've got to be rebellious and iconoclastic and a little bit gross. This isn't a princess movie. You remember those ads that were coming out at the time of Stitch, like interacting with, commenting on, subverting in a punky fashion, in a gross, because he's just a gross little boy.
Yeah.
And
and of course everyone doing a Stitch voice for the next 20 goddamn years.
20 goddamn years. Yes. Scooby-Doo, which was the number 1 new release the week before, drops to number 3. Absolutely.
Janine Garofalo?
I don't believe Janine Garofalo. Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Sarah Michelle Gellar was there. Yeah.
Pamela Anderson in the first one, or was that the second one?
Wild.
I don't recall.
Don't know. Yeah.
It's Linda Cardellini, isn't it? It's not Janine Garofalo.
Cardellini.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We do like a Linda Cardellini.
We love a Linda Cardellini. In this house?
In this house.
It's also the second week of The Bourne Identity, which is now number 4 and is making Mission Impossible 2 look all the more old and weary. The fourth week of The Sum of All Fears is number 5, and at number 6 is the second week of John Woo's follow-up to Mission Impossible 2, Wind Talkers.
A
film
movie
that was,
I wanted to be good.
Yeah, and it was
but
not.
It wasn't good.
Not
I'm
a success
sure.
either, sadly.
Really interesting story behind that movie.
Really interesting,
Maybe someone will redo it.
You can't help but feel like maybe John Woo, and maybe to a certain extent Nicolas Cage too, were the wrong people to make that film.
Maybe the wrong people to make that film.
Yeah.
Maybe hand that over to the Cherokee Nation. I don't know.
Maybe. Minority Report goes on to make $358 million worldwide, which makes it the 10th most successful movie of 2002, behind a list of films, each of which is either so extremely good or so extremely bad that there is no middle ground. 2002 is the most polarized box office that I've ever seen in my life. So I'm going to run down the top 10. And you're, again, going to give me just a thumbs up, thumbs down here.
Okay,
I think this is what we're going to do. The most successful film of the year, of course, The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers.
Up, obviously.
Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets is number 2. That's a hard down.
It's maybe a hard down.
Not just the worst film in that series.
From the worst book in the series.
But it is an
that's a down.
extremely bad and borderline incompetent piece of adaptation.
You're right.
That is
thumbs down.
So much worse than Philosopher's Stone.
Bad.
Christopher Columbus should have been kept away from those films. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man is number 3.
We'll give that an up.
I think we should.
Yeah.
Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones is number 4.
All the way down. Wow. Chamber of Secrets and Attack of the Clones in the same year.
Oh, it's not stopping there. Men in Black 2 is number 5 on the list. Die Another Day is number 6 on the list.
Down.
Signs is number 7 on the list.
And for
all of the Mel Gibson. No, I think Signs is a great film.
Okay.
Absolutely. Then Ice Age.
Down.
And then at number 9, making worldwide $379 million, making a scotch more than Minority Report with Tom Cruise and Steven Spielberg, is My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Jeez Louise. That movie did take everyone by storm for some reason that I never quite understood.
Budget of $5 million turned into $379 million worldwide. I believe yes. The answer to your unspoken question is yes. I believe that they are working on a new one.
That's what I thought. Okay. All right. Well, excellent.
Long may it continue. Yeah. So that is the production story of Minority Report, and I hope that you found it as fascinating as I did. It's kind of amazing. For all of the money and the effort and the complexity of its production, it's kind of amazing that it comes out feeling so unified. I don't completely love this film, but it does feel like a piece of work, right? It feels like a cohesive and coherent piece of work. For all of its wild excess, and for all that I would effortlessly, just give me a VHS tape of it and I will casually cut 25 minutes out of this film and you won't even notice that it's gone.
Sure.
I can do that with a pair of scissors and some sticky tape. I think that'll be just fine. For all of that, it does feel like it's the product of a vision, at least.
Yes,
would you say that's
certainly
true?
Certainly so. Yeah.
So let's get into, we're going to move very quickly through this plot for all of its labyrinthine complexity. We're going to start with this opening sequence, right? Our prologue that kind of establishes the world and asserts what is true and possible. The opening sequence, the Previs and Anderton's team going to catch the Red Ball case. Howard Marks, in exactly 24 minutes, is going to catch his wife Sarah in bed with another man named Donald Dubin. Upon finding them together, Howard will stab them both to death with a pair of scissors, and we have to stop him.
Do you believe that? Of this guy?
Well, shit, isn't that the question of Minority Report?
That is the question of Minority Report, actually, if you want to get just right down to it, from the very beginning.
I think we should. The film asserts this to be true, but all the way through, we're picking up ideas that this is perhaps not quite the case, right? We get, after this prologue, a very Paul Verhoeven fake commercial, kind of avowing the virtues of the pre-crime division, and we get this line in it: that which keeps us safe can also keep us free. And boy, I just wish we had some kind of, I don't know, memorable quote from one of the founding fathers of this great nation about how, in fact, freedom and security are opposites, and that those who sacrifice the one for the other deserve neither. It's dystopian, right? It's avowedly dystopian. That's absolutely the world that we are getting presented with here. What I find most interesting is the way in which the very real ability to see the future, right? There's no kind of shroud of ambiguity over the pre-cogs ability to see the future. They definitely can.
They definitely just can.
They definitely just can. The moral question then is repositioned from, do we trust this technology, to, is it right to act upon this information? And even more specifically, even more personally, is it right to exploit these people?
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, that's
it?
to me the most interesting question that this poses that I don't think they probably give enough attention to is just treating the precogs like technology rather than people, which they most definitely are, no matter how you slice it.
Because we resolve the problem of free will with Tom Cruise rolling a wooden ball along the curved console and Colin Farrell catching it, which is brilliant. Like, that is such a deft piece of kind of philosophical rhetoric right there. That is
okay. Yeah.
Why did you catch it? Because it was going to fall. Well, you caught it, so it didn't fall. So how do you know it was going to fall? Like, that's so good. It's very, elemental. It's kind of high school philosophy class.
A little high school philosophy class.
It's punchy and it's powerful enough that it carries you, I think, right over that hurdle. But I mean, ultimately, you're right. There is an unspoken question about free will. There is an unspoken question about predestination in particular in this film. It's kind of muddied because the precogs get different senses of the future because nothing is actually fixed. They're reading, in effect, probabilities, right? That's why the different versions kind of meld into one singular vision of the future. But that's why the notion of the Minority Report is so important, right? There might be a dissenting opinion presented here by one of the precogs who doesn't see things going the same way. The fact that that is enfolded in the bureaucracy and the infrastructure of the pre-crime division, again, just another futurist dystopian element there.
But very believable.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you believe this guy? This is Ari Gross, by the way, who played the friend on the Ellen sitcom a million years ago.
Oh, weird. Yeah.
And then did like every other TV show. The other guy is Joel Gretsch, who did the original version of the 4400.
Yes.
Which I
him
really
recognized.
liked.
Yeah.
He's also in that remake of V, which has Elizabeth Mitchell and Morena Baccarin in it. So can't really be bad, right?
Okay. Yeah.
I never saw that. Ari Gross, we should mention, just to continue our trail through this episode, was in Grey's Anatomy. Do you remember him in Grey's Anatomy?
Oh, I don't think I do remember him in Grey's Anatomy.
He played Adam Morris in the season 3, 5th episode, Oh, the Guilt. He has an ex-wife who gets stuck on his penis piercing.
Oh, yeah, I do remember that. I mean, who could forget?
Who could forget?
Sure.
You, apparently you blocked it out.
I think also the woman who, she like works for the pre-crime and she says, hey, that's the chief's seat. You can't sit here.
I may have made a list of these. Yes. You're talking about Anna Maria Horsford, who also appeared in Grey's Anatomy. She's not the only other actor we're going to talk about.
She played Dr. Ellis Gray's favorite scrub nurse.
She absolutely did. Seasons 1 and 3. You're absolutely right. And since we're still here in the prologue, we should probably also talk about Ashley Crowe, who plays the wife who is going to be murdered.
Yes.
Also appears in Grey's Anatomy.
I'm sure
Do you remember
does.
where and when?
Ooh,
this is a little later.
Not really, but now that I think about it, she looks super familiar. So someone's mom, probably. No. She, wait, maybe.
This is where the magic happens.
Is she one of the people who has a tumor that Derek operates on?
I'm afraid she doesn't. She is a heart patient. Season 7, episode 2, Shock to the System. This is when they're all recovering from the shooting. A tray is knocked over in the OR and Christina panics and drops to the floor.
Yes.
Yes. She is the one on the table in that episode.
Oh, okay. Well, not who I was thinking of. Anyway.
So what
nice
do you think?
See you here.
to get back to, what was it? Minority Report.
Minority Report.
What do you think of Cruise in this opening sequence?
Oh, I think it's great.
I think he's fantastic.
No, he's so good just being in his body. He's got such control of his body now.
Yeah.
And of course there's running in this and the whole speech about he loves to run just like his dad.
Here's what's
which
weird.
is kind of great.
I thought that was self-conscious. I thought that they were deliberately referencing the fact that Tom Cruise is by this point already famous for running, but it turns out Tom Cruise is not by this point already famous for running.
Wow,
I did some detective work.
Really?
The memes about Tom Cruise running, they do come from Mission Impossible 2, but they aren't popular until 2005, 2006. So after this film has come out. So Tom Cruise is not famous for his running.
Well,
by the time that we get to
still
Minority
running,
Report.
And he looks good doing it.
He absolutely
Under
does.
the bridges, hunting down drugs.
This is, I think, the greatest use to which Tom Cruise can be put. Make him extremely capable, but also under terrific pressure and holding on by his fingernails.
Yeah.
I could watch him do this all day. And this is, of course, what he will do basically for the rest of his career, particularly once he settles into his Mission Impossible groove there. But I think it's terrific. Yeah, I love the application of the technology through this opening sequence and the mundanity of him tracing these very tiny details to figure out where and when this thing is going to happen. It's a real like Sherlock moment. This is the other thing that it reminds me of course, is the Benedict Cumberbatch Sherlock, where he's
I can totally see that.
Summoning up these visions and this, metaphorical holographic screen in front of him where he can knit all of these clues together. Exactly. Yeah. I think that it works really well. And I think that Cruise is given the opportunity in this opening to do something that he really doesn't do in the rest of the film, which is play his intelligence. I think that he is convincing here as a detective in a way that he is absolutely not in the rest of the film. He just turns into an action star, and that's fine.
Sure.
But I like smart Cruise. I think he can communicate intelligence on screen when he's given the right material.
I think he did a great job too when he confronted, what is it, Leo Crow? Was that his name?
Yeah.
In the end? Yeah. Trying not to sob through reading the Miranda rights, I thought was really moving.
That was
a lovely piece of work.
He manages to deliver the emotionality of that very beautifully, but he doesn't in any way tackle the very obvious mystery that is happening right now. He doesn't tackle the fact that this is a very clear
very
setup.
Obvious setup, my dude. I love that Colin Farrell comes in and is like, listen, nah.
This is what we call an orgy of evidence. It really is though. After this opening, then, we learn that Anderton is a drug addict. He's grieving the loss of his son. He lives alone. He watches these old home movies. We're giving this character real, well, I guess dimension, right?
Sure. A little bit of backstory here.
Does it feel real to you?
I wish it did. I think it's the wife doesn't work for me very much.
Interesting.
I don't know why. I want to be fair to her.
She's not a very well-developed character.
Yeah,
no, I think there's not a lot there. And in any other movie, that one scene that we get of her initially would be all that we get of her. But then we decide to make her a central protagonist at the end of the film.
Which is so odd.
By which point, the running time of this film has run out of opportunities to give us, explanation or continuity. We don't know how people get from one place to another at the end of the film when we are painstaking in our depiction of people moving from one place to another at the beginning of the film.
Yeah.
It is wild how the pace gets out of control at the end of this film.
Yeah.
Did you like the Neuroin, the new heroin that he's addicted to?
No, I did not. Just every time I was like, are they saying heroin? They're obviously not saying heroin. What?
Yeah.
Is it new heroin? It's not like neurons heroin?
It's neuro. No, it is literally just new heroin. It's neuroin.
Jesus Christ. Okay. Stupid.
15 of the world's greatest thinkers gather in a hotel for 3 days.
And they came up with wooden marbles and new heroin.
They're not cool. They're 15 of the world's greatest thinkers. Not 15 of the world's greatest rock and roll bands.
Oh, God.
While we're talking about people papering over cracks in this movie, though, I really want to draw attention to Neil McDonough's best line of the film. Quote, "There's nothing more destructive to the metaphysical fabric that binds us than the untimely murder of one human being by another."
Everyone knows this.
I'm sorry, what?
First of all, metaphysics are just physics in this film. So we learned this right from the jump, kind of.
No, because this is the really interesting aspect of this film that is completely underdeveloped, right? He is talking metaphysically because that is the only justification for why the pre-cogs could see murders but not, other terrible crimes.
Yeah.
And then, the temple. We get the idea that the people in DC are deifying the pre-cogs. This is so rich and interesting and goes nowhere.
Well, kind of. We get Tom Cruise falls to his knees in a very sort of moment when Agatha starts telling him about what Sean's life might have been.
Yeah.
So there's something there that's pointing towards why we pray, why we believe, why we have faith and need.
But we're profoundly
gods,
uncomfortable with that reading of this character, particularly as we approach the end of the story, because we just want to we want to present her as a victim, and she is, to be clear, unambiguously a victim. Mm-hmm. But we want to separate this idea that her suffering is virtuous or has been transformative or has some kind of more generalized utility to it. We're so nervous about that we take this person who can definitely see the future, can definitely do that, and we pack her off to an island with no real resolution at all, except enjoy your life, I guess.
Yes, that's what I got. Basically, if you're far enough from anyone who would commit a murder, I guess
that's exactly
they're off in Sweden or something.
That's why they're sequestered away
Nordic
in
fjordish
the temple, is to keep them away from, physically away from the rest of the police department. Yeah.
That just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Like, it seems to me like yes, they keep them away from all of the officers, but the reason that they can prevent crime in DC is because it's such a highly populated area and they're surrounded by so many people. Mm-hmm. So I feel like just cordoning them off from the couple of people in the building that they're in doesn't seem to be doing them a whole lot of favors.
We don't really analyze how it works, right? Presumably what is intended is that the precogs are just generally able to see the future. Certainly that is what Agatha does when we're back at the luxurious farmhouse out on the coast.
Sure.
She just has a general sense of what the future might be like. It seems that being kept in the temple, being kept sedated, being kept anesthetized, being kept on the boundary of sleep is filtering their processes so that they are only picking up murders. Now, is that because murders are so powerful that they just stabilize the ether and are
That's what I got. Yeah.
I mean, that's explicitly what we're told.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know why that is the use to which we are putting these people who, again, can see the future. Why is this the plan? And I, there's a diminishing return when you start, kicking the tree of speculation in science fiction and waiting for fruit to fall on your head. But it is a great unanswered question. And it's all the more frustrating because we invoke all of this religious imagery, religious allegory here and do nothing with it. Now, to be clear, I'm very comfortable with presenting Agatha and what, Dash and
Arthur,
yeah, because it's Arthur Conan Doyle and it's Dashiell Hammett and it's Agatha Christie.
Oh, sure.
I'm very comfortable presenting them as victims because they are victims of a horrible series of crimes and some very effective dehumanization here. But if you're going to do that, then make that the crux of your story and don't start layering in all of this religious allegory to it, right? Mm-hmm. I think it's the other pre-crime guy who says we're more like clergy than cops as well. Which,
stupid.
Yeah, I would also like that version of the story. You could give me that one if you like, but don't set that one up and then give me the other one.
Just nothing.
It feels frustrating. Anderton goes down into the temple, showing Colin Farrell around. Yeah, I really do think that Matt Damon gives Officious so much more effectively than Colin Farrell does. I don't buy Colin Farrell as the pen pusher. I don't buy him as the guy who's coming in to audit this, cutting edge program. It doesn't.
No,
it doesn't work.
He's not that guy.
He just comes in like he's the bad guy.
Yep.
Yeah. Tom Cruise is grabbed by Agatha and gets the first vision. We get the first glimpse of this death, right? The death of her mother, which is ultimately going to be revealed at the end of the movie. And then we immediately introduce Max von Sydow, who's obviously great, obviously trustworthy, obviously not the bad guy.
Yeah, he's definitely giving bad guy.
Totally principled and good and trustworthy. This is the problem with Max von Sydow, though, is that he can play both. And when he plays trustworthy and good, when he plays a bastion of moral integrity, he is unstoppable. I always, of course, he's had such a long and prestigious career. But it's Lor Santeca, right? It's the beginning of The Force Awakens.
Oh, where he's so wonderful.
She's always been royalty to me.
Oh, so good. Yeah. Well, the same with Neil McDonough, too, because I was like, oh, is he going to be the bad guy? Because he also can do that, where he turns from like just being avuncular and friendly and, someone who helps you change your tire on the side of the road to someone who will definitely serial murder you.
Yes. I do find him less convincing, I think, when he is in his malevolent state. Than someone like Max von Sydow.
But he's cast that a lot.
Yeah, certainly.
It's those eyes.
It is. He's a funny looking dude, really.
Handsome as all get out,
yeah. We get the vision then of the premeditated murder of Leo Crow with Anderton as the killer. He freaks out, immediately kind of displays his trust in the system and distrust of, his own organization.
Yes.
And runs. Everybody runs. And then we get the jumping from car to car sequence. Some of which is very visually impressive, even if it's speculatively questionable, speculatively dubious.
Questionable. Yeah. Why? What is the benefit of making the cars run up and down skyscrapers?
Yes. Do we really, and in some cases, just vertical highways?
Why
have you just constructed a vertical highway?
It's going to take you so much longer to get places.
Expensive?
Why would you do that? Why are you adding 20 minutes to your trip? I don't understand.
Yeah, you've made all of these, turnoffs and filter lanes and feeder lanes look like the old Wipeout racing game, the near future racing game.
I don't know that one, but
but my Wipeout heads out there in the audience, they're loving that. That's a reference that everybody's really appreciating. And then, the crash into the yoga class, which is the dumbest joke I've seen in a Tom Cruise movie since. Wow.
Really shocking.
When was there a dumber joke in a Tom Cruise movie?
Shoplift the Pootie.
You're completely right. Janusz Kaminski does it again just by filming bad lines. It's so funny that you say that, though, because from the yoga class, we run down to the train where we see the changing newspaper technology. Again, a real lapse in the speculative imagination here. Yeah, no, people will get up to the minute news, which they will read in a newspaper. Obviously.
They will buy a massive, what
Guys.
is that, like 12 by 16? More than that even. I don't
It's
even know.
2000. We had flat panel monitors back then. I
Hilarious.
know we did.
Yeah.
What's brilliant, though.
You know what you don't see is anybody looking at their phone.
It's true. Again, a failure in the speculative imagination. I don't know what to tell you. We do get that weird holographic watch, which looks impossible to read. I don't know what the benefit of an inscrutable watch would be, but there it is. What's brilliant, though, is that when he gets to the train, and this is going to dovetail back to Shoplift the Pootie, just you watch it happen.
I'm waiting.
The guy who is holding the newspaper, who recognizes him,
Yes,
that's Cameron Crowe.
Oh, it did.
Really is.
Wow.
The woman sitting behind him with the blonde hair, we don't ever see her face, but the woman sitting behind him with the blonde hair is Cameron Diaz. Also, Paul Thomas Anderson is somewhere on that train, but he is so obscured in the final film that even he does not know where he is. He just says, no, I remember shooting that. I was definitely there that day. I don't really remember what I was wearing, and I don't know where I am in the finished film.
Yeah. What a bunch of nerds. That's kind of beautiful.
Isn't that fun, though?
That's fun. Yeah.
So there we
it's
go.
not fun to be a background actor most of the time, I will say. So props to them.
I bet it's a lot more fun when you're Cameron Diaz.
Show support. Sure, that's true. Yeah.
You're not chain smoking out by the dumpsters if you're Cameron Diaz. I promise you that.
Or if you are, you're the star of the goddamn dumpster.
Right?
Yeah.
And from there, we crash into another previs sequence. So it's another, we're just going to stop the narrative for 4 or 5 minutes. So that this time we can have jetpack escapades. We can just do
I forgot about the jetpack escapades. Yep. Those were stupid.
I do love the standoff at the beginning. I think that the standoff as they are approaching him and they're saying, don't run. And he says, everybody runs. And everybody knows that he's going to run and everybody's just getting ready for it. Then the jump scare of the dog in the window. And that's all he needs.
And I kind of like, even though it's terrible, I'm thinking that like body horror thing of like tasering the guy in the throat.
I'm sorry.
So he throws
those aren't
up.
tasers. Did you catch the name of those?
No.
6 sticks.
6 sticks.
Because they're sticks.
They're designed to make you throw up.
That make you sick, yes. That's exactly what they do.
Oh, no, that's not cool then.
It's really not.
Wow, weird.
Yeah. Isn't that
weird.
Wild?
That's wild.
We're just going to incapacitate you by making you vomit uncontrollably.
That's
better than being shot. Better probably for you than being tasered, honestly.
Really, but still interesting. No, the fact that nobody got a burned hand or fanny with all of the rocket packing, kind of ridiculous.
Are you disappointed
but we
that
did
didn't
burn some woman's pancakes? Like, shut the fuck up. What are we doing?
It's
the dumbest shit.
Dumbest shit. But again, you can have dumb action sequences in movies. I don't mind dumb action sequences in movies. Yeah. There are plenty of good Marvel movies with very, very stupid action sequences, but we don't in the same way stop the action. But this really is, it's going to be 10 years from this before these previous sequences are commonplace, and it's going to be another 5 or 6 years after that before they are literally everywhere. But everything that is bad about the previous sequence is here. It is narratively inert. It is edited so tightly that there's no air at all.
Yeah.
It's just shot, reaction shot. Anyway, we're going to stop talking about that now because it's depressing me horribly. And luckily, we won't have another opportunity to. After Jetpack Joyride, we get to, it's the car factory.
Yeah. Well, it's okay. We already went over that.
The movie kind of loses energy, though, like not just because of the nature of these distinct and cordoned off action sequences, but we do get like 4 or 5 in a row here.
Yeah.
Does that sap the energy from the film? Are you feeling less engaged with Cruise's plight here? Are you perhaps not engaged in Cruise's plight at all?
No, it's interesting. I always wonder about these things because I do check out. But I always assume that I'm an outlier there, or they wouldn't keep making them, right? People must love these action sequences.
We were just talking about this recently. I think it's a function of cinema, right? People go to movies for different things. And if you go to movies for a visual, auditory, physical experience, if you go for a roller coaster, then these action sequences are roller coasters.
I'm hearing a lot about the sandworm sequence in Dune 2.
I bet.
Apparently it's very cool.
And I bet it was prevised 2 years ago.
I bet it was.
And I bet that they stopped the story for 10 minutes while they do it. And you know what? Maybe not, because Denis Villeneuve, it strikes me, does have like more command over his art than a lot of directors who are working with much larger IP for much larger studios maybe have. But certainly, I think that is traditionally the problem, is that because these things are cordoned off, you just have to focus on them and not integrate them. So there isn't that strand of character, there isn't that strand of humor, there isn't that strand of plot development in the middle of the action sequence, which I think is what keeps us engaged. You can think back to very dumb 80s movies. You think back to Ghostbusters, and in every action sequence, story is happening. We're still getting jokes, we're still getting characterization. It's not just a special effects banquet. From there, though, we go to what is perhaps the opposite problem, because now it's time to go and meet Professor Sprout.
Oh yeah. Sure.
This is weird, right?
It's so weird. As soon as he jumps the wall and the weird vines come out, and you're like, what is this movie? This is wild.
Yeah.
I like her performance quite a lot. I think she's giving something interesting.
This is Lois Smith, an absolute legend. She has an incredible filmography. Her first ever movie was East of Eden.
Damn.
She's been in a million things.
Yeah.
Oh, she's been in Grey's Anatomy. Do you want to pull her out from Grey's Anatomy here?
Yes. In Grey's Anatomy, she was a woman whose husband should not have been allowed to drive, but she didn't want to take his keys.
God.
And he drove into like a grocery store. No, a farmer's market.
That is exactly right. That is
Thank you.
uncanny. Season 3, episode 9, From a Whisper to a Scream. That is exactly what happens. Here she is playing, that's so wild. Here she's playing Iris Hinneman, who basically invents pre-cogs, right?
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah,
basically,
I guess.
Basically does that. Yeah, it's an interesting performance. I think she's giving a lot, and I think that she is putting Tom Cruise on his back foot, which is kind of where I like
That's
him.
where you're like him. We know.
And I like very much how they are interacting in the moment. Oh, except for the kiss. The kiss was not scripted. The kiss was a surprise. The shock on his face is real.
I don't remember her kissing him. That's so
She
strange.
kisses his mouth toward the end of the sequence, and it is not cool.
Wow.
Because if you reverse that, it's evidently not cool.
I must have just looked down to make a note.
Yeah.
That's so strange that I
Kisses
missed
him
that.
full on the mouth in the middle of a sequence, and he
Weird.
recoils with a look on his face.
Yeah.
Which is understand. Hey guys, don't go kissing people without consent.
Yeah. Not
Kiss
cool.
everyone with consent.
Everyone
as
with
many
consent.
people as you can. Go get your kisses on. But don't kiss people without consent, regardless of how old you are or how hot they are.
Yeah.
Just
yeah.
don't do it. Actually, that's maybe an interesting segue. Let's talk about how hot Tom Cruise is in this movie. Does he work for you? We're back to short hair, which is nice to see.
He did a crew cut. Yeah, crew cut?
Yeah.
Is that it? Yeah.
Not quite a crew, but, well, I mean, at the end, of course.
Sure. Then, yeah, all the way down.
Practically bald, yes.
No, not hot for me in this.
Is that
Maybe
a function of Cruise or the aesthetic of the film in general?
aesthetic of
do you
the
think?
film,
Yeah.
I think, in general, and just this character being so unattractive in so many ways, just so unhinged.
Yeah.
So no, not attractive to me, and just deeply unsettling when he gets the new eyes.
It's very bad.
Yeah.
That is, in fact, our next scene, because we're told he has to break back into the pre-crime division,
Right.
which is going to involve, of course, a 10-minute sequence in which he gets new eyes.
Yep.
Doesn't have to. We didn't need to. We could have, and let me throw this out there, not.
We could have not. And then we just borrow straight from Kubrick from
Absolutely. Yeah. From Clockwork Orange. Yeah.
Clockwork Orange. Thank you. For
Yeah.
a moment that just left my brain. But yeah, absolutely.
It's unsettling, and it just keeps getting more unsettling.
Yes.
It just keeps...
Did you look this up? This looked like a practical effect. This did not look like special effects for prying his eyes open.
No, practical effect. Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Probably it's 2002, so we're probably doing some digital augmentation.
Some digital augmentation.
But yes,
sure.
fundamentally a practical effect.
Gross.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know what else I could have lived without? The sandwich.
The sandwich.
So stupid.
The sandwich and the green milk.
Yeah. Is that worse than the yoga joke?
This is the thing. I think no. Because, first of all, I don't think it's supposed to be played for a laugh. I think it is supposed to make you recoil in that way that I was talking about with body horror earlier.
Yeah.
I think it does do that. I found it, because I wasn't expecting it in this film, I found it more upsetting than I would in a horror movie.
That's fair, I think. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. But the artifice of, I'm going to put this gorgeously constructed sandwich right here in the fridge on the second shelf, but on the top shelf, food that's been in there for 6 months.
It doesn't make any sense and it's stupid. No,
it's
no,
dumb.
No,
yeah.
the whole...
And undermotivated.
Yeah, well, and the doctor and his nurse, and you put me away, and now I'm
this
going
sequence
to
feels
actually
like
do nothing. It seems like actually he does nothing at all. Yeah. So
he's just presented as a threat, but is not a threat. See also Colin Farrell in this film.
Yeah.
It's
doesn't work.
Weird how much this sequence reminds me of Vanilla Sky.
Mm.
Had he torn the bandages off of his eyes after eating the terrible sandwich and drinking the bad milk, shouted tech support, it would have fit absolutely well.
Right.
It's such a weird choice.
Yeah, it's weird.
This is also where we get Colin Farrell going to Lara, Anderton's ex-wife.
Yes.
And getting real close to her.
Oh, yeah. It's
So
upsetting and weird
physically
and gross.
close.
Yeah.
Are we supposed to think that he's going to do is it supposed to feel like a physical threat? It does feel like a physical threat.
I think it's supposed to, yes, a little
Is it
bit.
supposed to, or is this just a product of some very unorthodox shot framing that's happening in this film?
No, I think he is trying to get under her skin, and I think that it is working. And she's great with him.
Yeah.
When she's like, actually, I don't have any sugar. That's a great fuck you moment, and I appreciate it.
I do like what the actress is giving. I did spend a lot of time thinking about whether or not it was the character or the actor in this instance, and I really do keep coming back to the character just being horribly underdeveloped, right?
Yeah.
When we get the scene later of Agatha giving this vision of Sean's imaginary future, right? It's all about the dad and not at all about the mom. But also you're there. It's tough. We then get the infiltration of the pre-crime division. We get the abduction of Agatha. I think do this quite quickly, quite deftly. It's physical in a way that I really appreciate. It doesn't depend upon a big like Mission Impossible hook to get there. Besides that, whatever that injection is that disfigures his face.
Oh, yes.
Another callback to
Impossible.
Vanilla Sky, perhaps. It's so weird.
It is too. That's
And then, the dropping of the eyes rolling down the corridor, which is just
dumb, but also upsetting. What do you think of pre-cog babysitter guy?
Yeah, awful. Really well done. Really masterfully done. I would contrast him with Tim Blake Nelson, who is running whatever, incarceration facility they have in the basement.
Oh, yeah.
Who's just like doing what Tim Blake Nelson does, which is to say going too far, in pretty much every shot with pretty much every line pretty consistently.
He have a giant
why does anything? I have no idea. Yeah.
The pipe organ.
Well, that's like religious imagery again, though, right?
Oh, I guess.
There's a sense in which if the precogs are preaching or are communicating, this is their congregation. These are the people who have been touched, albeit indirectly, by their message. These are the people who have been taken up in their call.
But they call it hell, don't they? This is hell.
But, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's an incompatible vision of it doesn't mean that we are worshiping these precogs as, good divine beings, just as things that are greater than us. It's unfinished. It's incomplete. There's not
and the halos.
There's exactly.
Too much.
Does the physicality of the escape from the pre-crime division work for you? Do you buy Agatha as now a person in the world?
Yes. Although I must admit, I don't really remember anything about that until they get to the mall.
It happens extremely quickly.
We get another bad joke where Tom Cruise goes to the Gap and is holding up clothes against another woman because he can't.
He's just trying to guesstimate Agatha's size.
Yes,
yeah, no, that's a dumb joke for sure.
Yeah.
Although I will say, I really like the sequence through the mall. I really like what Samantha Morton is doing. I like the mechanic of it. I like, picking up the umbrella and then 5 minutes later popping the umbrella and suddenly saying, oh, this makes you completely anonymous.
Yes.
It's a really interesting use of a precognitive power. And I think that she sells the dreamlike aspect of it beautifully. Very early in the sequence when she just says, is this now?
Yes.
It's so powerful. So
powerful. Yeah, that was really great.
Like movie.
Yes, this is now.
You understand what you've got when you're doing this. Why are you doing all this other stuff? Yeah.
I liked the umbrella sequence, although it did strike me as one of the most this is a movie cinematic things in a movie full of those sorts of dopey things, because if there's one thing about a rainy day, it's that only half the motherfuckers have umbrellas, right?
No, it's the future.
People are it's the future. And you don't know it's going to rain today.
Acid rain, Elizabeth. Acid rain is such a problem in the future world of 2050.
Even in these cars who are run on God knows what. Hilarious.
Yeah, no, all of this. The umbrellas works. The balloons work. I think the balloons are so stupid. But the way that she is clinging to him saying, wait, is, really effective. Works for me beautifully.
I agree.
And then we just get a weird, convenient coincidence, except I suppose because we're predicting the future, it's not exactly a coincidence as much as it's predestination, as much as it has been foreseen, because we get the giant billboard that is being erected outside of the skyscraper that is the face that he saw in the vision previously.
Which is something that I had always conflated with Vanilla Sky. I thought that was in Vanilla Sky.
It could be.
It could have been.
It could be.
Yeah. When they're going, up and up and up at LE or whatever it is. Yeah. What did you think of stopping the woman and saying, don't go home, he knows?
Fantastic.
I think so, too.
Again, I really don't think that we put a foot wrong.
Really
Apart
chilling.
from the joke, and it is just because we're in this wide shot and it feels like a sitcom joke. There's something about the framing of that shot.
And I think
apart from
mall,
holding the clothes up, I love them all.
Yeah. I think the mall itself also doesn't really work for me in a futuristic sense. It just looks like a 1992 mall, which is interesting because all malls now still look like that if they're still around. And most of them, if they're anything like the ones here in Oklahoma, are just slowly decaying and becoming more and more empty.
No, we've traveled enough to know that that's a universal condition here in these United States.
And it should be, perhaps.
Sure. So this is where we get the showdown with Crow. We get all of the planted evidence. We get Samantha Morton
Yeah.
appealing to Anderton to make a choice that it doesn't have to be this way. And when we take a half step back from the film, this is actually really good.
Yeah.
This is actually a really nice solution to what seems to be an intractable mystery at the beginning of the film. So that works for me pretty well.
Yeah, especially as soon as Colin Farrell comes in and immediately is like, this is a setup.
Yeah,
because
this is
otherwise
nonsense.
you're
Yeah.
like, this is too simple. Are you kidding me?
Sure.
Yeah, but since we have that, it works. And again, since Cruise's performance there when he's reading the Miranda rights is so good. And
I
also
love
that guy,
that, yeah.
the guy does a good job too.
He does.
Whoever he is,
Yeah.
who's like, if you don't kill me, then my family gets nothing. And then here's a huge plot point that I'm not really sure because it happened so fast. That guy then takes the gun, but in Tom Cruise's hand still, and does shoot himself, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's what I thought. Just wanted to make sure.
It's pretty effective. It's well motivated at least, and the emotional intensity is high enough that I think, yeah, it works.
Yeah.
From there, we cut all the way away to Laura's house, right?
Yeah. The perfect little would move in today to that completely timeless.
Yeah. And we immediately
Beachfront, whatever
start
it is.
unpicking all of our mysteries. He discovers with no real motivation exactly who Anne Lively was. He understands suddenly that
just
this
gets
is
it.
Agatha's
Yeah.
mother. He
Yeah.
just puts the pieces together. Then we get that scene that we referred to all the way through, what Sean would have been like and how it all would have worked. And then the brilliance of Samantha Morton right at the end of that sequence when she just snaps to and tells him to run.
Very, like, I just got chills
So
again.
strong.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
good.
And you get those weird helicopter-y things coming down, descending onto this, again, otherwise like perfect colonial looking.
Yeah. A timeless landscape.
Timeless,
Sure.
yeah. Yeah, that was really effective.
Anderton is haloed. Agatha is returned to the temple. Laura goes to see Max von Sydow for reasons which we don't completely understand.
Yeah.
We already know that he's the villain.
All of this
by
takes
this
too
point
long.
because he's already killed Colin Farrell. Sorry, we just breezed past him.
Oh yeah, also he kills Colin
here.
Farrell.
Yeah. But then
Yeah.
the way that he overplays his hand, and she's all, "I didn't tell you that she was drowned."
Yeah.
Come on, you guys. Why are we doing this twice? This is bizarre. Yeah.
This reminds me of like junior high mystery theater. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Yeah, it's all just too.
Well, and I'm not a fan of junior high mystery theater.
It has its place.
I think there's a way of orchestrating that reveal in a way that would have been more satisfying, right? It's bad that we're in Laura's POV in that moment because she is not a character and has not been present in this film thus far. Like literally, and Neil McDonough could have done that and it would have been great. It would have been much more effective rather than handing it off to the ex-wife.
You're right.
But again, the fundamental problem is he's already killed Colin Farrell.
Yeah.
We've already played this twist. We don't get to play it again. And if you're not resting on the ambiguity of his accidental reveal of his own nefarious nature, then that scene is just like 4 times longer than it should be.
Yeah.
It's
and then who is
so
it that
long.
ultimately puts the precog vision, the previs up on the screen of the party?
It's the
That
other
is-
it's the other cop from
Yeah.
Who I
it's
think
just
doesn't even
whole
get a
lot.
name, right?
Doesn't even get a name I know of. Yeah.
Probably does get a name, honestly, but I certainly didn't pick it
No,
up.
didn't
Yeah.
clock it. Yeah.
We cut from that to Laura going down to containment to get her husband back with no explanation of how she gets there.
How she does it or how it works. Well,
Right.
she brings his eyeball with him to get in.
Sure, but like this is still a police department, right?
Yeah.
Like there are
and
presumably
how do you
still
just
people
talk
around.
this guy into letting him back up again and
Exactly
just taking
right.
his halo off and then walking back out again? I don't know.
And
I don't know.
then we have Tom Cruise on the phone with Max von Sydow so
Sure.
that he can explain the plot of the film to
Yes.
him in a slightly concealed voiceover, like a slightly disguised voiceover. Doesn't work, I'm afraid. No.
No, it doesn't.
Ultimately, what do you think about this final showdown, right? He presents Max von Sydow with this irresolvable paradox. Either you kill me and you go to jail for the rest of your life and your career is in ruins, or you don't kill me and you demonstrate that the precog division is fake, can be manipulated, is not reliable, and your dream comes tumbling down. And Max von Sydow finds the hidden third answer.
Right.
And kills himself. Does that work? Does that feel satisfying as a resolution to the
It feels
paradox?
satisfying as a resolution to the paradox, but not to the story. And then that we just hard cut to, and so we shut everything down, and there hasn't been precog ever since. And you're like, whoa.
And Agatha and Dash and Art are all living on a little island.
Yeah.
I think that island is out by Maine. I think it's like out on the Atlantic coast someplace. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
And that's the end of the film.
That's it.
This is perhaps, in all of the Cruise filmography so far, the movie about which I have been the most negative that I have enjoyed the most.
Oh,
I think this is
interesting.
a pretty good movie. I think this is like a solid film. I think it is overstuffed. I think it is ill-disciplined. I think it is in many ways genuinely kind of ugly and not in a cool way. Like in many ways it is genuinely ugly in a cool way, but often sometimes it's just bad to look at and I don't enjoy it.
Do you remember, was it cool then?
This look? Absolutely.
And this movie,
this was a vision
cool?
of the future. Absolutely. This was cool.
Okay.
Yeah. And it really is, I think.
That sounds right to me.
I think it is a development of what the Wachowskis were doing in The Matrix, which was so unbelievably cool. But also both a little more stylish and a little more conventional, right? I feel like Spielberg's kind of pushing it in two different directions here that are kind of in conflict with each other. I think you get to do this visual style, you get to do this kind of cinematography, or you get to treat your camera more inventively. But doing both makes me feel disconnected from the action, and you do occasionally slip up, and suddenly your shot just looks like it's from a different kind of film, from a different kind of genre, from a different kind of time period, right? There's that very weird shot, which I find emotionally so effective. Right after Anderton has rescued Agatha and he holds her close and we're on his profile and we see her other profile like behind his shoulder and it looks like she is a severed head. No, it's cool. But like my understanding of what is happening in that shot, because we're shooting it with such a shallow lens and everything is in focus and there's no intimacy to it, I find very, very strange.
Okay.
I think you need to cut a full hour out of this film. Like this needs to be a trim 80 minutes, 90 plus credits, right?
I thought it was almost over when you came into the bedroom last night and I paused it and I said, how the hell are there 40 minutes left? Yeah.
Because we do all of these reveals way too early.
Yes.
And then we stuff the back third. I would call it the third act in another film that had a third act, but this is taking an unorthodox kind of jazz approach to structure here. It's so overstuffed and yet feels so airless. We have no time to demonstrate how we get from one place to another, how these things fit together. And the movie is so slow in its opening act. We also definitely preload all of those action sequences that we were talking about. It's basically, 40 minutes of action sequence at the beginning of the second act. And nothing through the rest of, like very little, at least through the rest of the film. So I think it has huge structural problems. I think it has a lack of confidence in what it is doing. I think it opens doors that it has no intention of walking through. I think it raises questions it has no intention or ability to answer. I love Colin Farrell, and I think that he is badly cast in this film.
Agreed.
Except for the showdown scene with Max von Sydow.
Yeah,
in which I think he is fantastic.
Yeah,
I think that is exactly what you do. I think that's a really lovely performance. So I find it difficult to kind of figure out my feelings about this film, because what is good is spectacularly good and what is bad is disposable. You literally could just cut it out and make this film degrees better very, very simply. Does that kind of match your feeling about it? Or
maybe. I've been thinking about, of course, where it goes on the list.
Yeah, of course. That's our next segment. We should do that.
We should do it. Let's think about it. So, and it's true, because like I think about it as like being a bad movie when I think about it. But when I look at the full list, there's no way it doesn't fall like right in the middle of the pack. I think it's doing what it does and failing where it fails in at least like interesting, what did I say last night? It's like really taking big swings. And I always appreciate that. It's not a safe movie by any stretch. And I love going out on a limb artistically. I just wish the story came to something.
I think that there's a version of the story that really does. I think if you distill it down and you cut a lot of the excess, I think you have a much simpler, much more straightforward, much more dynamic, and therefore much more emotionally impactful. I mean, you do actually have to reshoot the ending, right? The ending is just kind of flawed in a couple of very important ways. But I do think that the bones are there for a really powerful and intimate exploration of predestination and of fate and of destiny and of free will. I think that you can do something really good with what you actually have on screen. And I just, again, because what is bad is inessential makes the film better, although there is a lot of what is bad. That's a weird judgment from me, right? That's a weird bit of criticism than a film where the bad and the good are mixed more elementally. I don't know. I think personally it goes a little higher. Let's take a look at the list, though. Right now, number 10, Vanilla Sky. Better or worse than Vanilla Sky?
Ooh, I mean, there's and this is where it's going to land. It's like somewhere around Vanilla Sky for me. I liked Vanilla Sky better, but I don't know that it was a better movie. I just liked it more. This is always the hard part for me about making this.
I don't know what the metrics are here.
Exactly.
Yeah,
the metrics get so weird because I'm just like, in my list of like my subjective opinion, I think that I like Vanilla Sky more. But I think that Minority Report certainly has held up better than Vanilla Sky. I watched Minority Report in film school when we were doing a segment on surveillance in cinema and reading Catherine Zimmer.
Yeah.
So
I think the
there's
treatment...
no way you watch Vanilla Sky in film school, right? Probably not.
I think you probably could. I think there's a lot happening there too. I think it's also there's some very audacious cinematography, very intentional, very audacious cinematography in Vanilla Sky. I think that Minority Report is more effective in what it is trying to do. And I think that what it is trying to do is perhaps a little more ambitious. I also think, I think that the realization of the dystopia is very effective. I think a lot of the incidental world building that we haven't really talked about, right? Just the architecture of buildings that are seen for just a moment, or the way that sets are laid out. Tom Cruise's house, right? Anderton's house is so
the house is pretty great,
interesting and rich and complicated as a space.
Production design was really definitely a slay. Yeah.
Production design is a hands down win, and I think much better than Vanilla Sky, honestly.
Yeah, I think so too.
So that's kind of where I come down on that. But then at number 9, right above Vanilla Sky, is Legend.
Which is such a different movie. How can you even compare?
But also very flawed.
Also
right?
very flawed.
Yeah.
I think this is probably better than Legend.
That's an interesting position.
I think it probably is.
I had already decided in my heart to concede and put it below Legend.
Oh, that's
above
sweet of
Vanilla
you.
Sky.
Yeah, no. I definitely no. That one is definitely subjective love.
Well, then, in that case, we're looking at number 8. We're looking at Interview with the Vampire. Do you think it's another, flawed but ambitious film? Again, another busted structure, a broken end.
Real busted and broken ending. Yeah, it's true.
And again, actually rather like Minority Report, a real sense that it does not know what it is trying to say.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, that's true.
A real willingness to engage with some big ideas and then not offer any answers.
Yeah, and above that we're getting to Rain Man and the Firm, which are like totally different.
Above that we're getting into Rain Man. Rain Man is like properly good, I think.
Yeah.
My dividing line
is
between
right.
Rain Man and Interview, I think.
So right around Interview. Yeah, Interview. I think tucking it in between Interview with the Vampire and Legend, if nothing else, just because of, God, Kirsten Dunst's performance was just...
You know what?
Something so extraordinary.
Kirsten Dunst's performance versus Samantha Morton's performance.
Yeah.
Very similar, I think.
Similar.
Both very affecting. Both inarguably the best thing in their film.
Yes. Yes.
I hadn't thought of that, but I think that works. So yeah, I think it's just a straight above or below there, right?
Yeah, I think it goes below. I think it goes below Interview and between Interview and Legend. That would be what, our new number 9?
I'll take it. Number 9 on a list of 24 films. Satisfyingly above the midpoint there. A couple spots above Vanilla Sky.
Okay.
I'm content with that.
Okay. All right. Good.
That is going to do it for this episode of The Last Star in Hollywood. Everything we do here at The Last Star in Hollywood is possible because of you guys. It is because of the generous support of our patrons over on patreon.com/nextword, where normally at this point I would tell you about the poll that we just launched for our April bonus episode, but I just checked and you guys really want us to talk about Total Recall. So we're probably going to end up talking about Total Recall. That is going to be
excited
a blast.
For that. I have like very vague memories of seeing it probably on cable TV when I was like a kid.
Sure.
And I'm certain only being able to watch certain parts of it, but it's a fever dream in my brain. So I'm looking forward to that.
I think it is the best Arnold Schwarzenegger film that is a pure Arnold Schwarzenegger film, right? Terminator 2 Judgment Day is a James Cameron film that Arnold Schwarzenegger is in. That is not the case with Verhoeven. I think that Schwarzenegger is front and center and running the show. Michael Ironside is in it. Ronnie Cox is in it. It's a great list of character actors.
Okay.
Some really progressive special effects, very advanced special effects for their time that now look like absolute garbage.
I'm sure.
And yeah, just wall-to-wall exploitation of everyone involved in a gross, seedy Paul Verhoeven kind of way.
Yeah.
We're probably going to talk about that in April, unless a whole bunch of new people head on over to patreon.com/nextword and sign up to vote for either Boogie Nights or Ever After or We Bought a Zoo. Because that's the choice that we offered our lovely patrons.
We had a couple of martinis. We were talking about Bridget Jones, and we ended up with kind of a weird list this time.
That's the other thing that you get for signing up on the Patreon are the other bonus episodes. Bridget Jones's Diary and Gone in 60 Seconds and Robin Hood Prince of Thieves and I always say Dirty Dancing, even though technically we put out Dirty Dancing on the main feed. Go
yeah.
listen to the Dirty Dancing bonus episode. That's what we do over on the Patreon. You also get to hang out with us on our private, exclusive, invite-only Discord, along with the best and smartest
Just
people
the
on the
kindest and
internet.
best,
Elizabeth,
yeah.
I want to ask you to thank the best and kindest, smartest people on the internet.
Of
And
course.
I have a sense, I have a vision, a premonition that you will.
I feel like I will.
Cool. The system works.
Our heartfelt thanks to our superstar patrons who are Leslie Skipa, Louise in Dallas, Megan Lauder, Phoebe, Art Kilmer, Kimberly Bear, Self on a Shelf, Jolene Stark, and Chris Dawns.
Thank you guys so much. You make all of this, whatever this is, possible. And we're very grateful.
We sure are. We really, really are. Thank you.
So as previously mentioned, we will not be covering Tom Cruise's other great film of the year 2002. That is to say, his cameo in Austin Powers in Goldmember.
Ugh.
Maybe we'll cover that. Maybe I'll cut those out and we'll cover that and Young Guns over on the Patreon too. That would be a hilarious 10-minute episode. I think that would be super fun. Our next real movie, though, is going to be a really interesting discussion. We skip ahead a single year to 2003 to Edward Zwick's The Last Samurai. I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah.
This is a film I super did not like. So
I don't remember it very clearly, but I remember thinking that it was beautiful, and I remember really enjoying the soundtrack.
And Zwick is a really interesting filmmaker too, so it's going to be interesting to kind of move from this auteur mode that Cruise has been in to someone much more commercial. And yeah, I think that's going to be a really interesting discussion. So join us next week for that here on The Last Star in Hollywood. Until then, thanks so much for listening.
We'll see you soon.